I'm your host, Jeremy, and this is Gamers List. Alright, thanks for checking out episode 3 of Gamers List. And we're going to have quite a few segments this episode, and we'll have a special guest, which you guys will find out a little bit later. But for our first segment, we're going to start it off the same way we did episode 2, when we're going to do...
Oh my god.
I Have to Play That. And if you don't know what it is, it's where we talk about games that aren't out yet, but they're coming, and it's something I definitely have to play. So, take a look. So that game's coming out on mobile, iOS and Android sometime this year. I think it looks really cool and it's something I think you guys should play. Probably don't know about it, but I'd keep it on the radar. Alright, for the next segment, I'm going to do a top 5. Now I'm going to count down my top 5 games of last generation. And they don't have to be on consoles, just as long as they came out in that time span. So we're going to start counting them down now.
Number 5.
Okay, so the first game is actually a mobile game, and it's Infinity Blade. And it's the whole series, so not necessarily just one game, and that's because I made the rules of this top 5 anyways. But Infinity Blade I thought was awesome. Something that took a lot of my time away, and I could play it anywhere. The graphics were great, the developer was great, and it had a lot of fun systems. And it definitely progressed between Infinity Blade 2 and 3. If you haven't played the series, I definitely recommend it.
Number 4.
Alright, number 4, XCOM Enemy Unknown. This game I played straight through. It took me about 40 hours and I didn't stop. That was the span of about 2 or 3 days. So something I really had a lot of fun with. I do like strategy games, but I thought this game just took it to another level. Had a lot of action, it was fun, but it was also a thinking man's game. So really recommended. If you haven't played it, you really should.
Number 3.
Rocksteady's Arkham series games. I loved Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. Thought they were amazing games, and even Arkham Origins I didn't mind. The game was really fun. I was a huge fan always of Splinter Cell, and this game had those stealth mechanics that just really got to me. But it was still action, and I thought it was still RPG. The story was great, and if you haven't played the final scenes of Arkham City, I really recommend it.
Number 2.
Alright, we're down to the final 2. Second one for me is The Witcher. Witcher 1 and 2 were awesome. And it really introduced me to the world of The Witcher. Geralt is an awesome character, and the books were really good too. It started as a book series that was then made into a game. It actually, if you don't know, switched developers. Originally, another developer was going to make it, but then CD Projekt Red picked it up. As I showed you in episode 2 of Gamers List, they're also working on Cyberpunk, which is due to come out. But this game is an amazing RPG. It's got great story elements, it's got great action, and it also just has great characters. And that's one thing I really liked, and that's why The Witcher is my number 2.
Number 1.
If you've seen any of my gaming setup videos, then you know that my number 1 is nothing other than Mass Effect. For last generation of consoles, this game blew my mind. When the first Mass Effect came out, it was something that I just never played anything like it before. It actually introduced me to a lot more RPGs and got me to play a lot of other games. I played Lost Odyssey because of Mass Effect, which is another great RPG. But this game to me has everything. It's got story, it's got characters, it's got action, but it also has just a really fun cohesiveness to everything. Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 all tie in together. And despite a lot of the criticism with 3 not ending everything the way that you thought it would, I still enjoyed it and I thought it was a lot of fun. Because at the end of the day, that's what games are about, and to me, I had the most fun playing Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. That's the top 5 games for me personally of the last console generation. It's just something I thought that was fun. It doesn't have to be what games are the best, it's just whatever you like to play. Because if it's something you're going to do in your free time, you don't want to play a game that's just well recommended, you want to play something that you actually like. So in the comments below, post what is your top 5 games of last console generation. For this next segment, we're going to do the news, but it's going to be a little different because I'm not going to be doing it. This is where we'll have one of our guests come on and they're going to do the news for you guys, so enjoy.
Hey guys, it's Caitlin with Just News. Right now, the Dota 2 Internationals is going on and ESPN3 is broadcasting live. They're currently on day 2, and with a $10 million prize pool, who wouldn't want to check it out?
So over the next few days, we get to watch these players and teams compete to be the best in the world.
If you were lucky enough to attend QuakeCon this year, then you already got a sneak peek of Doom 4. Attendees are saying the game looks pretty awesome, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Standing on the edge of discovery. A powerful technology with infinite possibilities. Instead, we let them in. Fused in an unholy union of flesh and metal. Now this brave new world has gone to hell.
Next, we have Star Citizen. So far, they've raised $49 million in funding, and their last 2 stretch goals were plants. So either these plants are really awesome, or they're just running out of stuff to do. Last, we have Destiny. The beta is currently going on, and for those of you who haven't seen the new video on the channel, you should go check it out. But just in case, here's the opening cinematic.
We called it the Traveler, and its arrival changed us forever. Great cities were built on Mars and Venus. Mercury became a garden world. Human lifespan tripled. It was a time of miracles. We stared out at the galaxy and knew that it was our destiny to walk in the light of other stars. But the traveler had an enemy, a darkness which had hunted it for eons across the black gulfs of space. Centuries after our golden age began, this darkness found us. And that was the end of everything. But it was also a beginning.
Thanks, Caitlin, for the news. For this next segment, we're going to do a more traditional podcast that you saw in episode 1. So, enjoy. Gonna hit play. All right, but the way that we sync them up is... Okay, that's how I'll know where the videos sync.
How did you know that?
What?
How did you know
Because
that?
I'm a genius. Okay, so how you guys doing? This next segment is we're going to talk about games that kind of has a little bit to do with the violence in video games that you guys heard back in episode 1, but it's geared a little different. So I have my wife here, Caitlin.
Hello.
And as you saw, she did the news for you guys. Just to give you a little history, we've been married for, 3 years?
Fail. 3.5.
3.5 years. And we do own our beautiful home now, and the pool pump just went out today on a nice Florida summer day. But I went to the store and got that fixed so we could keep swimming. Did you like swimming?
Yeah. Well, for as long as we were in there, yeah.
Okay, so just to give you guys an idea, my wife, her idea of gaming is playing Wheel of Fortune with me on the iPad. That's probably her favorite game.
It's about as far as it goes for me. And maybe sometimes solitaire.
But for this topic, that's actually going to be perfect because what we're going to be talking about is kind of like what I said with violence in games, but more geared towards children. And coming from someone who doesn't play a lot of games, just to get their opinion, to see how they react and how they feel about these different things. So first question for you, because as you know, we don't have any children yet.
We don't?
So, no, not unless you got one I don't know about. Okay, so we have no kids, but I've often talked to my wife about if we did have kids, will we allow them to play mature rated games, and at what age, and how would we monitor that? Because as I talked about with violence in games in a previous episode, we learned that games don't teach you to be violent, but they can be influential just the way a book could or a movie. So question I'd have for you is, at what age do you think is appropriate for a child to see killing in a game, such as shooting or murdering?
Wow.
Dun dun dun.
I know. I would guess, honestly, it's just like watching movies and things like that. And I would think maybe a 12 or 13-year-old would be able to watch movies like that. So maybe that would be a good age. Coming from an outsider where I haven't played games like that, I would probably say that's the age that I would allow that.
I think the cat agrees because the cat is meowing underneath the door. Go ahead and let the cat in, and we'll keep this thing going. But yeah, I definitely agree. Also, oh, there comes Kitty. If you want to see, whoop, oh, I'm gonna fall here. If you want to see my awesome cat, here's the kitty. And I don't think she wants to. Do you want to meow into the microphone? No.
No, she's happy now.
Okay, so tangled up my cord. Okay. Yeah, I don't know, 12 or 13. Wow. Let's see. So what movies were you allowed to watch when you were 12 or 13?
I was allowed to watch scary movies, for sure. If that has anything to do with it. And there's a lot of gore and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know if I grew up in a normal household or whatever. I'd like to think I did, but Yeah, about that age is when I started watching movies like that.
So I think I was...
And understood what was going on, too. It wasn't like I was watching them and going, what the heck's going on? I understood what was going on and right from wrong.
So do you think that the movie itself could have influenced you to make poor decisions, or that your mind had already developed to a point to where you could tell right from wrong in the movie?
Right, like I just, yeah, no. I honestly, watching it, I was able to know on my own right from wrong. Watching a movie would not have influenced me at that age.
So would you say the games then are the same as the movie? Do you feel like a game has more of an impact because you're doing something physical, you're actually playing?
I could see where it possibly could. It's a good point, I guess. I don't know. I feel like if you have them in the right mindset, then really it wouldn't matter. You know?
Yeah, I mean, what I was gonna say earlier is that for me, I was able to play Halo. I think my mom bought it for me for Christmas on my 15th birthday, and I remember being so excited because it's technically not a game that you were allowed to buy on your own because of the mature ratings. Whenever you go to the store, there's mature ratings for games, and kids, if you're under 17, aren't supposed to be able to buy them. So for me, being able to play it, I thought it was great. Now the game, as you guys know, doesn't have a lot of gore or anything for that matter as far as violence goes. I mean, you do shoot, but it's very comic related as far as like, you know, comic booky. And the language, there is some language, but if you watch a PG-13 movie today, you will see or hear way more than you would in that game. And sorry if my cat's going to keep knocking the table here, but she thinks this is a jungle gym. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. It's such a tough conversation whenever you start talking about kids and you're thinking, 12 or 13 when they should be allowed to do these things. I mean, even like having a cell phone, what age did you get a kid a cell phone? Because you're worried about their safety, but at the same time, you're worried about what they can also do with those things. And, everyone always hears these horror stories about, parents buy these games, these kids, and these kids go out and do all these murderous things. But I would think that because I'm pretty sure we've talked about this, that you have the same opinion as me, and that probably has more to do with the parenting than the actual media. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So just like with the cell phone, it's not so much having the cell phone, it's the parenting of what you're saying the kid can do with the cell phone.
Exactly.
So, okay, so let's get back to you growing up and watching these movies. Can you remember any movie that you watched? I remember I watched The Mummy, and I wasn't allowed because I was a little younger, and when the movie came out, there were some scary parts. My parents didn't want me freaking out, but they let me watch it anyways.
I honestly don't think I ever did that. I really don't think I ever did. If I did, I don't remember. Until I started, what was the first movie that I watched that was even scary? I guess it was Scream. It might have been Scream.
Scream, yeah, I remember
and
that.
I watched it with my family, and I wasn't scared at all. And I think from that point on was when they were kind of like, she can handle it, she's fine, type thing.
Did you ever sneak into a movie at the theater that you weren't old enough to see?
No, I was never that rebellious.
I think I saw one movie that I wasn't old enough to see, and I was worried the whole time of getting kicked out. Because I'm just sitting there in my seat, and you know how the guy walks up and down the aisle, he's got the little flashlight, and he's like checking everything out. I don't know, what is he looking for? Popcorn on the ground? I don't know. But I was just so nervous that they were gonna grab me and ask for my ID when we know that would never happen at a theater.
I think I might have been with you. Was it when the theater was packed? I think it was like a you had to be like 17 or older to get into the movie type.
Probably,
ordeal.
yeah. I don't know who I was with. Is that bad?
Yeah.
No. But yeah, no, I don't know. So, but the point is that what age is appropriate to be playing these more mature related games? Because I actually work with a lady, and I asked her, and she was saying that her son was playing Watch Dogs, and he knew all about it. He's 7, and it's a mature rated game. But I don't think that that particular game is a game that, one, is a positive role model, and I don't think the game is that violent. Now, there are some adult themes in the game, but it's nothing like a Grand Theft Auto, because if you ever play Grand Theft Auto, it's not so much the adult content, it's how it's handled. It's handled in a very immature way that is, very degrading, and if you're not old enough to understand that, they really don't think these bad things about all these people or the stuff that gets said or the way that, a woman gets treated in the game or whatever, then that could be influential to a younger mind.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before too. There are a lot of parents who don't watch or don't look into these games before they buy them for kids too, so they don't even know what their children are playing.
So that brings up the good question then. Whose responsibility do you think it should be? Do you think that the retailer should be held accountable to restrict the purchases? Because if you can walk into Walmart and a 6-year-old kid can probably buy a rated R, he can go to the self-checkout and buy a rated R movie, but he can't buy a video game. So do you think that the restrictions should be for movies and games and music even? Because, you can buy explicit music the same way, but games are locked up and they're supposed to be checking for age.
See, that's just the thing. You could almost say that with anything. If they are already secure, there's really nothing else you can do. I would think that the game developers, and they're already making the right decisions and doing everything they can to make sure the right people are playing the games.
Yeah, because you have these people like Hillary Clinton and these other, people who've been pushing towards, getting more restrictions on games, and even some games shut down because of their content. But do you think games should be filtered at all? Like, do you think as long as you're old enough to consume the content, it should be available, as the movie industry is? Because the movie industry doesn't restrict content and say no one should watch this. They just say this age should watch it. Right. Do you feel like that a game that is so violent shouldn't be made, or should just be restricted?
Should just be restricted.
Okay. Yeah, because I agree. I would say that, if you're saying that someone can't make the content, then no one can consume it, and that's just putting a restriction on creativity.
Right, exactly.
For better or for worse. Now, I'm not going to agree with all the creative things that get made, and some of those things I might not never want to consume myself, but I do think that there shouldn't be those restrictions, because then it just hinders development, I think, as a society or as people,
Yeah.
Okay, so we've already laid down some ground rules on what we think about games. This is good. This is gonna work out for our marriage, right? Okay, so then the next thing is when you do have these games, what do you feel about online? Do you feel like at what age do you feel like they should be allowed to interact with other people? Because then you get into the conversation, you always hear about these 12 and 13-year-old kids on Call of Duty who are cursing out these people, or, worried about
suicide.
Right, committing suicide, or you're worried about these like sex predators going online and talking to your kids. Because MMOs, that I played Final Fantasy 14 addictively for what? I don't know.
Oh gosh, forever.
For like
forever.
It was like 3 or 4 months. It wasn't forever. And now I've been playing Destiny quite a bit, but that beta's only going to last like 10 days. But when the full game comes out, I'm going to play that a lot. And I think a game like Destiny is a game that, because of Halo, the people who originally made Halo are making Destiny. That game, a lot of kids played, and a lot of kids are going to play something like this. So what do you think about the online situation? Do you feel like, there should be an age restriction for playing it online?
Well, there's not really an age restriction for Facebook or anything like that, is there?
No, that's a good point. I'd never considered that.
Because I would think that Facebook and Twitter and things like that are almost more dangerous than playing an online game. Or just if you think about the sexual predators and things like that, you can run into the exact same thing on Facebook and such. So, if you're going to allow them to do one, I guess you would allow them to do the other. And from what I have seen and experienced here locally, the majority of parents are allowing their kids on Facebook at 12, 11, 13.
Yeah, because then that gets into like the cell phone conversation. But at what point can you can't restrict all these things? I was glad that my parents never really were overbearing, because my parents are very conservative, and they did a good job in raising me, I thought, because they just taught me what was right and wrong, but they didn't tell me I had to do it a certain way. They let me feel like it was an active choice that I wanted to make. And I know that you had a different childhood, as we've talked with, being allowed to do things, or, curfews and all these different things. But do you feel like that it mainly just comes onto the parenting for even internet related things? So like Facebook, or do you feel like that someone can start talking to a 12-year-old and regardless of what things they've learned from their parents, they can be persuaded,
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that they could be persuaded regardless, depending on the personality of the child. But then I guess you would be going into a completely different topic about the personality of that person,
So because our society is so connected, like more than our parents were, because our parents don't understand these things.
Yeah.
So do you think maybe a lot of those problems will go away because we understand how social media works, we understand how the internet works, we understand how when they go and play these online games, I know what happens, so I know what to look out for. I know,
But I feel like it's growing so much that it's going to change by the time we have a 12 or 13 year old.
We're going to have our VR headsets on. We're going to have our Oculus Rift, and we're going to be grandparents not knowing what's going on in the Rift. I guess that's true too, is because they never expected the things we would have. So my parents can't even begin to turn on a game, go online, and figure out what content can be had.
The difference may be is since we grew up during the time period that we did where things were constantly changing. I mean, we had dial-up AOL when we were young, and now we have high-speed internet. So we were growing up during a time where everything was changing so rapidly that we kind of understood everything that was going on, and we can adapt to things easily.
Yeah, I think our adaption rate is much higher because of that. Like you said, with new things coming out and having to keep up, like, cell phones are released every 6 months, or, TVs, or even games. Games, I think, are a great way for a child, if you want to talk about positive things, to learn new things, because how often in your life do you learn something new?
Right.
I often think about that is, if you go to work, or you go to school and you come home, you're learning textbooks things, but how often are you learning to adapt to new things? Each game has a set of rules, like whenever we play that Wheel of Fortune game, I know I joked about it earlier, but it has a set of rules that you have to learn for that game, and it creates your mind to teach and learn new things. And especially something like that, that's more of a learning game, because you're learning about words, about letters, guessing words, you're learning new words from a game like that. So there's definitely educational games, but getting back to the actual social interaction of online, I think personally that you hear about these people in Korea, as you said earlier, who commit suicide from playing these MMOs like World of Warcraft and Terra and all these games because they believe so much in the world they are. So do you think that...
I would think that you would notice that in your child, though. Wouldn't you?
Well, that's what I was going to say.
If they had that addictive personality where I can't leave this game.
Right. So then that comes into the different conversation of if you're letting them consume these things, or if you are personally consuming these things, should you put a restriction on time? Like, should you restrict yourself to...
I definitely think so.
Being governed.
I think a child does need to have that, okay... You get home, you do your homework, and then you have that hour, or maybe an hour and a half, depending on how good your day was.
Every kid in America hates you right now. In an hour and a half, you can't even get into
I know
the multiplayer match.
This before. No. But still, when you're talking about school age children, weekends, that's a completely different ball game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think if you're during, especially weekdays with school and all these things, I mean, even an hour or 2 hours is a lot in a day, because if you get out of school and it's 3 o'clock, you have to do your homework till 5, which is ridiculous that you have homework in school every day. But yeah, I agree.
Well, at the rate we're going, we won't have homework.
Yeah. So yeah, I do agree with that, as having the restriction, because then the child knows that this is not the real world. Yeah. This is something I'm doing for fun, but it isn't my world, because if you spend too much time in the fake world, then your real world becomes the world you're not in.
Right.
So then, like, we've seen my, one of, I guess my nephew is what it would be.
He's your cousin.
Cousin. Sorry, whoops. I'm really bad at this. All those family situations, cousins, nephews. I don't know any of that.
He doesn't even know their names.
No.
Let's just be real.
But we've watched him whenever we go to a family event, he's just glued to his Nintendo 3DS playing these Pokemon games or different things.
We'll be outside on the boat.
Playing his game, which I think is fine to have that passion and like that more than being outside or like that more than being on a boat. But at what expense are you doing that if it's happening 24/7?
Right.
You know, so I think that's a big discussion that a parent should have with a child on, you know, you can't wake up Saturday from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. and play this game unless it's a special occasion, or like, you know, like this Destiny beta, if it's only out for 10 days, in that situation, okay, if you want to play, you know, 5 hours this day, we're still having dinner, you know, you're not going to skip dinner, because that's the problem. You hear about these kids, they skip eating, they skip using the bathroom, and some people have died from doing those things. And I mean, that's a little crazy, we have to admit. But there's crazy people who do all kinds of stuff. I don't think it's crazy enough to blow it out of proportion and say it's the game's fault or the game maker's fault. And I think that's the bad distinction that the media makes, and they like to blame the big business because they're the easy target.
Right.
No one likes to say that on, you know, on news and media that you're a bad parent.
Right.
You know, they want to find other solutions so that way you don't feel like you failed, you know, because
Yeah.
they don't want to feel like they failed themselves, you know.
Right. They don't want to do that to the consumer, the parents who are buying the product, you know.
Exactly. And obviously we don't have kids yet, so, you know, our opinions on things might change because we don't know what having a child is like, but I do think that creating an environment that they like to be in is key for these other things. You know, if you don't have a family environment where they want to eat, you know, dinner, then how are you going to get them away from their video game, because it's not enticing?
Right, right.
You know what I mean? If dinner is just going to be, you know, microwave macaroni that is slid across the table, then, you know, that's not really
what we do now.
Yeah. We have a lot of TV dinners. So but that's not an experience that I would want to pull myself away from doing something that's fun to go do, you know? Cuz you know, my parents always made it a good thing to make sure that when we did have a family time, it was fun, you know, and it could be interactive. So, you know, we talked about, you know, kids playing these games, the online factors of being online if you're younger. But what do you think, because we were talking about time limits, even when you're an adult, do you think there still should be restrictions? You know, if you're in your 30s, you're single. You know, let's say I never got married, but you're single and...
You would never come out of your room.
Well, that's the question is, do you feel like, you know, that you should still have those boundaries of setting reservation, you know?
I do. I definitely do, because in my job that I have now, I can tell the couple customers who we have who do not come out very often that they do. And they'll tell you that that's what they do. They'll play video games, and that's all they do. They go to work, they play their video games. Go to work, they play their video games. They don't have any social life, and you can tell by the way they speak that they don't have a social life.
Because they're not interacting, you know, as
Right.
much. And well, they might be interacting, but they're interacting keyboard, you know, typing,
Yes.
or in a different lingo.
They're socially awkward face to face.
Right. And yeah, and I could definitely see that, you know, for anyone if you're locked away from other people, you know, physically. Okay, so if you remember, you got addicted a long time ago to a Legend of Zelda game.
Yeah.
Which one was it? Phantom Hourglass?
Yes.
Yes, that was it. On the Nintendo...
Only game I've ever completed.
This is
say.
this is when I used to work at GameStop. I don't work there now, but I used to work at GameStop, and I bought you a DS, and you really liked that game. So the reason I want to bring this up is you played that. That's when I was playing all the Final Fantasy games. I was playing like Final Fantasy 1 to Final Fantasy 6 all in a row.
You played all of those games while I finished that one.
Right, and I beat them all in a row, and I played them for a long time. It was a lot of fun. I loved playing it. It was great. But we both played, you know, pretty addictively that game. So the question I have for you is, if you remember how you felt when you were playing that, is it a hard thing then to, when you get addicted to something like that, is it hard to want to pull away, you know?
Well, it's funny now that you've asked me that, because thinking about it now, I don't remember playing it that much.
Right, like when you're...
I don't remember sitting... Like, I had to have played it a lot, because I finished it pretty quickly, I think, for me not playing games at all.
Right.
And I don't remember any of it. So, I mean, I remember playing the game, obviously, but I don't remember that time.
Right.
the time period.
Exactly. So that's the thing is when you get into a game like or a book you're reading, the pages turn themselves when you're reading a book, you know, that you're really into. It just keeps going. The pages are going and you're like, wow, you know, I'm already on page 100. But do you feel like a game has that same thing? So
If not, even more so.
yeah,
than
I would.
I.
Yeah, because
It's more interactive. So you're constantly okay. I can do this. I can do this. I can do
Right.
this. Versus where like you were just comparing it to a book, you eventually get tired of that because you're literally just sitting there. You're reading.
right. You
though
get
it's very
kind of physically tired, like mentally
Yes.
tired.
Yeah.
So then the reason I brought that up is if you're a parent and you know pretend you're the child and you're playing the game and you've lost track of time, you're just into it, you know, you're playing, you're having a lot of fun, but the parent's the one always coming and saying, hey, you have to stop playing this game, you know, it's been 3 hours. That'll probably start to make you angry at some point, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you would just feel like that everything you're, you know, having fun is being cut off. So that's why I think that if you do want to set those boundaries, you need to do them first. So that because if you knew before you started playing, because we had no time limit, you know, at that time we were living with your mom and we were both just playing games. Like when I would get off work, we'd play and you had no time limit. So there was no one telling you, hey, you have to quit. But if you thought ahead of time, okay, you know, I'm going to play this probably for 3 hours today, you probably wouldn't have been as upset if you had to stop playing.
Right.
You know?
Because you already had your mindset that it was only going to be X amount of hours or whatever.
Right. And a lot of times you give me those restrictions now. You'll say, okay, 10:30 we're going to bed, you know? So
But I am pretty infamous for barging in. You're like, okay, let's go to bed.
But the thing is, though, is I know that, too, going in. So I'm like, okay, well, I probably won't start this, you know, part. Oh, I see on my PlayStation there's friend invites for parties. We're just going to ignore that, okay? But, yeah, I mean, you know, if I know ahead of time, hey, you know, let's say I wasn't married. We go back to the situation of the guy being the 30-year-old. If you say, okay, I'm going to play this for 6 hours today because I don't want to waste my whole day doing this, then you're setting yourself up, I think, for a more successful mental state, you know? I got a guy at work who would play games all the time, and I would always tell him about getting this game or that game, and he's like, no, I still got to finish this other game I'm playing because if I get too much, I will sit home on my days off and just play it all day. And he would always obsessively say that, and I was just thinking, well, what's wrong with that? Why don't you just play it all day? But it makes sense because you don't want to just play it all day because then, like you said, that becomes your reality and, you know, you're missing out on the social interactions you could be having. And I don't think people our generation have a problem being social or being interactive, you know. There is a difference in actually meeting up with people because a lot of things can be done virtual now.
Right.
Like with Facebook, I'm sure, you know, family events don't happen maybe as often because of some people having Facebook because they can talk now to those family members like they couldn't. Or they might even happen more because now they can actually meet up with them, you know? So it can go both ways for something like that. Anything that you want to add into this discussion about games?
No, I think we pretty much touched on everything.
That's pretty much it. That's really what I wanted to talk about in this segment. It's a little bit of aside from talking about violence in games, and I just wanted to get another opinion. That's why I had my wife on, Caitlin. So, but basically, I hope you guys enjoyed this segment, and we'll have more coming up on the episode. So stick around. Okay, for our last segment, we're gonna play a game. It's a gaming channel, so why not? Alright, I'm going to play a video of a popular game, but all you're going to get is the sound. You guys got to try and guess what the game being played is for the next episode. So I'll reveal it in episode 4 and see if you guys can get it right.
What are you so afraid of?
You're treading on some mighty thin ice here.
What do we do?
You make every shot count. You see, I believe everything happens for a reason.
Alright, so that's going to do it for episode 3 of Gamers List. Appreciate you guys for watching, and make sure you stick around for episode 4.